Thank you, families, for taking time to join this second town hall. My name is Eric Twist. I'm the president of Great Hearts Arizona. I'm joined today by Jake Tawney, our vice president of curriculum, Brandon Crow, our executive director of upper schools, Leanne Fawcett, our executive director of lower schools, and Ava Williams Cornelius, our director of nursing and our health and safety expert. The format for our town hall today will be a presentation for pretty much the first 60 minutes with Q&A at the end for roughly 30 minutes. You know, much of the information being shared this afternoon is new, but we will reiterate some things we have shared in past communiques just to make sure that it's clear for everybody. Most importantly today, we want to give you an in-depth look at the updated Great Hearts Distance Learning Program and the structure of the school day. Of course, an update on what to expect for the return to building as well. We want to go through that, which includes sharing the COVID incident response plan. So we'll go through a few scenarios of the procedural dominoes that fall should we have a positive case on campus. So we want to walk you through that. And I want to remind everyone that all the information can be found on our website, which you hopefully should be able to see here up on the screen. But I'll say it for you just in case. GreatHeartsAmerica.org, greatheartsamerica.org/safe return /Arizona. So greatheartsamerica.org/safe return /AZ. So let's start by just a review of the local and state order and some of the start date stuff here. I think most people know that the governor and the superintendent announced on Thursday that the Department of Health Services would be developing metrics for reopening schools that the department will release on August 7th, so not till later next week. And we don't know what those will entail, but you know, we suspect they will be a mixture of variables meant to determine if it is safe in certain communities to open a school. As we said in the letter that we sent last Thursday evening, once we have those, we'll share them with you. But what I will say now is that, you know, we are confident in the timeline that we currently have of opening for distance learning starting next week for most schools, and then on campus 3 weeks later. We believe it's a good timeline, and we believe it's unlikely to change. We will, of course, pivot if health and safety necessitate it in certain communities, but we also know that extended delays in the start of school have other big risks, and we are sensitive to those as well. Now, I just want to be clear on this. We're starting Great Hearts Distance Learning on the original start date for everybody because, really for two reasons. It's time for our kids to get back on some routine, engaging with their teachers and subjects and learning again. But also the governor has made it clear that schools must do this. So for those families who are wondering, you know, hey, why don't we just delay instruction until it can happen in person? Well, we neither think that is the best for students, nor do we have that option per the state directive. Details have been shared by your school leadership on when the start of school will be for your academy and what it will look like. If you haven't received that information, please just reach out to your headmaster and they'll make sure that you get up to speed. I want to remind everybody that those schools will reopen campuses here. Most of our schools in August will actually reopen their campuses, most of them. Parents are not obligated to come back in person in August, and that the distance learning program that will start in early August for most schools will be offered throughout this school year to anybody that requests it. Now, let me reintroduce to you Jake, Brandon, and Leanne in this section. Ava is also with us, like I mentioned, to discuss, to dive deeper into the Great Hearts Distance Learning program, as well as the return to building information. So I want to turn it over to Jake to kick off the first deep dive here on the revamped distance learning option. So Jake, it's all yours.
Thanks, Eric, and thank you, families. Good afternoon. It's good to be here with you again for this second town hall, following our first town hall, which was really just a few weeks ago, but here we are again, and this time on the cusp of a brand new school year. So first and foremost, I would just say we're excited. Everybody at Great Hearts is excited to start a new school year. Our teachers are excited to teach. We know that our students are excited to be back and excited to start learning. And even in these seemingly ever-changing times, the energy surrounding this new school year is palpable. So our goal today is to provide you with an update to the first town hall, and we start with an update on our distance learning program. So I'll back up here a little bit. At Great Hearts, as many of you know, we're committed to conversation. It forms the backbone of our instruction, the backbone of our pedagogy. Our Socratic method, from anything from kindergarten Singapore math all the way up through 12th grade humane letters, conversation is an important part of that. But our commitment to conversation also extends to you, to the families. Following the first town hall, many of you engaged in some extremely valuable conversation with us, either by writing some emails to us or picking up the phone and giving us a call. I think I personally responded to well over 100 emails in the last couple of weeks and dozens of phone calls. And I know I'm not alone. Our two executive directors, Brandon Crow and Leanne Fawcett, as well as Eric, were responding to many of your emails and taking many of your phone calls as well. And in response to that feedback and in response to that conversation that you engaged in with us, I want to say two things. So first of all, thank you. Thank you for all the people who took the time to write in, to put your thoughts down on paper, or take the time to pick up a phone and give us a call. Thank you for engaging that conversation with us. It makes us better. And the second thing is just to let you know we heard you. In a very personal way, I heard you loud and clear. In fact, there were three specific things that we heard over and over and over again from our parents. One was that as parents, you really wanted in a distance learning program to feel a close connection with the school, to feel a close connection with teachers from that academy. Two is related to that. In terms of that close connection, we heard from you that you wanted more video support, especially some of those live moments, those live instructional moments. And third, you were really looking for some academic continuity between the distance learning program and that classroom experience, so that when it comes time for the students to come back into the building, when you feel that it's safe, that we can transition those students seamlessly. There was a fourth thing that we heard as well, but it was a bit more numeric. When we surveyed to find out how many of you were interested in taking on the distance learning program for the first quarter, it was a pretty astounding 45%, with 55% then interested in coming back into the buildings as soon as we're able to open our doors. So again, we're grateful for this feedback. We're grateful for you taking the time to put this down on paper or to pick up a phone. And because of that feedback and because of the numbers that we saw, it gave us an opportunity to really revisit this and to reimagine what distance learning could be. And so in response to number one, that desire for a closer connection with the building, all students will be taught by teachers from their academy. In response to number two, video contact, both synchronous and asynchronous, meaning some recorded, but also lots of live moments of live instruction. This will be a big part of the distance learning program. And then finally, in response to number three, our distance learning students will be held to the same academic standards as their in-building peers. We know that you, along with us, think the curriculum is very important, and we want to make sure that the distance learning students are getting the same high-quality curriculum and high-quality instruction, so that when you feel that you can return to the building, whether it's after the first quarter or after the second quarter, or even at the start of next school year, that the students can transition back seamlessly. So once again, thank you. Thank you for the feedback you've given. We heard it, we listened, and we're excited to bring to you these changes today. Now, in the spirit of having that close connection with the school, I'm delighted to turn this over to my colleagues, Leanne Fawcett, who's our Executive Director of Lower Schools here, the Archway Schools here in Arizona, and Brandon Crow, our Executive Director for the Prep Schools. And they're going to flesh out more details about what this looks like at the Archway and the Prep level. And so, Leanne, I think I'll turn it to you first.
Thanks, Jake. Appreciate it. You know, what's really important to me is that our students don't fall behind. I think that's probably really important to you as parents as well. We want our students in the distance learning program to be able to keep up with their peers who are in the classroom in their Spalding, in math, in literature, in reading, of course, in grammar and writing, so that when they return to the classroom, they're not even a minute behind. So in order to facilitate that, keeping them caught up with the rest, we're going to be offering recorded, live, and interactive videos for every subject. Daily, students will have instruction in Spalding, math, literature, and reading, and weekly in grammar, writing, history, and science. In addition to that, there'll be video lessons from specials teachers every week. During the first weeks of school, most schools will have that video instruction in the mornings, followed by written activities in the afternoon. When we return to school, that schedule may change, as some of our teachers will be teaching hybrid classes with some students online and some students in the classroom, and we'll have to adjust their video classes to adjust for their schedules in the classroom. Your headmaster will be having a town hall if you haven't had one already, and they'll be posting some sample schedules on their website to give you an idea of that. The state is requiring that we take attendance and that students engage in instruction for as many hours as they do in the classroom when they're learning outside of the classroom. So this equates to about 2.5 hours for kindergarten, 5 hours for 1st through 3rd grade, and 6 hours for 4th through 6th. In this way, the distance learners can keep up with their peers in the classroom and meet the state requirements for minimum hours of instruction. This is likely going to mean at least a couple of hours on the computer, along with some reading and some work in their consumable workbooks, with breaks for lunch, recess, and time for specials. Attendance will be taken by students completing short activities during or following each video. We understand that students may not be able to attend Zoom sessions at the assigned times, so they will be recorded and links will be provided for them to be watched later. But we want you to do what you can to make sure that every student in the family has a device to work from. We will be making certain that we can provide those for you if you don't have them, and can attend as many of those synchronous sessions as possible, because that is where the teacher can best be checking for the student's understanding. Brandon, what will distance learning look like for our middle school and high school students?
Thanks, Leanne. Yeah, that's a really good question. So much of what Jake has already laid out, and Leanne as well, certainly applies to all of our students learning in Great Hearts in Arizona while they're online. But there are a couple of things that are unique to the prep school experience. And so we just want to share 4 of those kind of principles with you. I know if I'm at home watching this, I'm thinking, hey, just show me a sample schedule. Like, I want to know, when is my student going to be in humane letters? When are they going to be in science? And so the reason we don't have one of those for you is because, much like Leanne mentioned, your academy, your headmaster, if they haven't done so already, within the next few days will schedule their own academy-specific town hall to go through their plan with you in great detail, right? To work through, hey, here's actually when we're going to have tutoring, here's when Latin class is, all right, your student's in 8th grade, it'll work this way. So because there's a good bit of variety and creativity amongst our 11 prep schools in Arizona, we've left to them to execute on these 4 principles that we've worked through. So do keep an eye out for the school-specific invite to work through with your headmaster and school's leadership team what a day in the life of the Chandler prep student or the Trivium prep student will look like. But all schools will line up with these 4 parameters. The first is that there will be 3 video touch points per week per class. And so what this means is that at minimum, your student will be live Zooming with a teacher for every class at least twice a week. That can be tutoring, that could be also just direct live instruction, but that'll also have some asynchronous video, as we call it, where teachers record a lesson or some snippet of a demonstration that's been viewed by students at a time that fits for them. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you can expect, on average, 4 to 6 hours per day, per school day, of work for your student. And so that can vary a little bit based on what classes fall when, what grade level your student is in, but that's an expectation. And so this is really helping us to get to a place, like Leanne and Jake mentioned, where our students are not falling behind. This is not just a small sample of what the work is that a Great Heart student does. Rather, this is the full and real thing, just in an online format. And that 4 to 6 hours can include, like we said, some live online learning, some independent work, and then some guided student work as well. So that would be what you can expect for your student. Another thing here is that on a weekly basis for each class, students will be submitting work and getting feedback. So if a student's wondering, hey, how am I doing in chemistry class? Or, how did I do in that medieval history work we were studying? They're going to get feedback, right? They're going to have to submit work and they're going to get feedback directly from their teachers. So you can expect that. And then finally, something that's a bit different from what I know some schools are doing, and especially what we were doing in Q4 of last year, was that students should come to class every single day prepared to learn. What we mean by that is that rather than posting at the beginning of the week a whole load of work to be completed by week's end, students are going to be working on things every day. Sometimes it'll be certain classes, and other days it'll be other classes, but students will work every school day. Really, this is because we know this is what's best educationally, right? Academically and intellectually for students. We don't want to have students procrastinating, right, and waiting until the end of the weekend to complete gobs and gobs of work, nor do we want the kind of overachieving student to start and knock it all out in a 24-hour period and then kind of be sitting there having nothing to do. So it's going to be much more structured like a regular school day would be, where there's work that comes every day. So I know that there are a lot of questions that you all will have that are both general and also very specific to your academy or your student situation. And like we said, there will be an academy-specific opportunity very shortly here, within the next week, if you haven't had one already, to engage your headmaster and school's leadership team about the particulars of your academy's workload. But the other piece is, here in a few minutes, we'll open this up for a Q&A. So if you do have questions about distance learning, what that's going to look like, and want us to spell it out more, we'll certainly take questions about that in a few minutes. However, before we get to that, as Eric mentioned, what we will do is return to buildings here soon, right? Meaning about 3 weeks after, as Eric said, the return to school online, there'll be an opportunity for students to learn in person. And so Leanne is going to spend some time walking us through what it looks like when our buildings start to reopen for students and the precautions that we have in place there. Go ahead, Leanne.
Guys, Leanne, let me just bump in real fast here. We didn't want to have to do this. We're getting questions from parents because of these stupid bots that are in the comment section about whether or not they need to pay to watch this. You don't need to pay. Don't click on those at all. Those are just spam bots. So just ignore them and don't click on anything unless it's actually posted by Great Hearts. I know most of you know that. There were a few people that had some questions. So just want to share that with everybody. Leanne said my piece on that. It's now yours. Sorry to bump in there for a second.
All right. Okay. While our schools have announced dates at which they will return to the classroom, those may change. We've been looking at the metrics and we'll get those from the health department, and those will help us to determine when it is the safest to return to the building. We're not going to return to the buildings until we know that it's safe. Your headmaster will be communicating that information with you. And when we open up our buildings, we have a strong protection plan that starts with keeping the symptomatic people at home. Students or teachers who are even showing symptoms of COVID-19 are going to be asked to stay home. Checking temperatures in the morning is one way that we're going to look for symptoms, but we're also going to be alert to other symptoms as well. People who have had close contact with someone who has COVID-19 will also be asked to stay at home. Now, students who are quarantined will be invited to join in distance learning or accept homework from their teacher. In some cases, the distance learning teacher will be their classroom teacher, depending on whether or not that teacher has a hybrid class. Quarantine students will not be required to stay in distance learning for the entire quarter. They will be an exception. Now, we know some of you have questions about what if I come to school and my temperature is, my child's temperature is over 100 because it was really hot in the car. We do have plans to take the temperature again with a different thermometer, with an oral thermometer. So all those temperatures will be double checked just to be sure before we send students home again. Now we realize the virus can be spread by asymptomatic people as well. So we also have measures to protect against that. So those start with reducing the viral load in the school. And that begins with installing hospital grade MERC 13 HVAC filters in every school and increasing the airflow in our buildings. We're also using a hospital grade cleaning solution. These are 99% effective, but they're non-irritating and they contain no VOCs. We've hired an extra day porter at each of our campuses. They will spend the entire day just wiping down surfaces, wiping down doorknobs, telephones, things like that, giving the bathrooms an extra cleaning every day. And every campus now has an electrostatic sprayer. That's going to be used weekly. It sends out a disinfecting mist that covers every surface and then stays on that surface for several days. The wipes we've purchased for the classrooms are the low odor type and non-irritating. Those will be the ones the students use to wipe their desks. And we're asking that students keep their supplies with them. They will not be sharing supplies. Any supplies that they do share, such as math manipulatives or science equipment, will be disinfected after each use. We're going to have hand sanitizer available outside every classroom. Students will be required to use it every time they enter a classroom, before they eat snacks and before they eat lunch, and after they eat lunch, and then again before and after they go to the playground. Students and teachers will wear masks, and we will use desk shields in the K-5 classrooms. I think Mr. Twist is going to give you, show you a picture of those desk shields and tell you a little bit more about the masks in a few minutes. Lastly, headmasters are doing their best to keep sections of students from mixing together during the day. However, we have built in some times when students may mix with one or two other sections from their grade level, and we did that intentionally, knowing that students were going to need some social support from their friends who might not be in their section this year. We wanted them to have some time when they might see kids other than those who are in their section. That's going to be limited to just a few sections at just a few points in the day so that we can still make contact tracing possible. Now, on the Archway side, what this means is that for most students, morning drop-off, the students will go directly to their classrooms. Headmasters may arrange for a section or two to get to go on the playground and might rotate those sections onto the playground during the week. That's up to their discretion. Once in the classrooms, teachers will have tutoring. They might have bell work for the students or silent reading for the students. When recess comes up in the day, that's not going to look much different. The only thing that will be different will be there will be fewer kids on the playground. Students will be lining up and getting hand sanitizer before they go and on their way back. And they will not be required to wear their masks at recess, but they may if you would like for them to. We will have breakaway lanyards that attach to the masks so that those don't get lost. During lunch, we're going to have fewer students in the cafeteria. They'll be sitting arm's length apart. So that means that we're going to have more staggered lunches, or we'll have some students who will be eating in their classrooms. Students won't be congregating in the NPRs or out on the field for dismissal at the end of the day. They're going to be waiting in their classrooms. And we have a system which will be used in which your car will be identified by a placard with either your last name or a number. And the system will notify the teacher that you're waiting to pick up your child. If your school has not used that system before, your headmaster will be explaining how that works to you. We're still going to be offering Athenaeum, following the same mitigation guidelines, but clubs will not be offered for the first quarter. Brandon, can you tell us a little bit about what the return to campus will look like at the prep level?
Sure thing. Thanks, Leanne. So similar to what Leanne had mentioned in general for the schools and for the Archways, it's similar to what we mentioned about distance learning. When we return to school, there will be a few facets of the prep school experience that will be a little bit different and are unique to the prep school. So there are really three that I wanted to just hit on today. The first is about athletics. So athletics is a major part of our prep school offering. And what we've been working on for the last several months under really the guidance of our network director of athletics, John Rickey, is really figuring out the best way to keep students healthy, but keep them active and engaged and advancing in their athletic pursuits. So what our primary path is to follow the lead or the guidance of the AIA. The AIA is the governing body for interscholastic sports throughout the state of Arizona, from the very smallest schools to the very largest. And so as of right now, the AIA guidance is for a shortened fall season to begin on August 17th. That's the first time that practices would begin, with then competition or games beginning around Labor Day. And that's not something that we would just decide on our own. That would be the state as a whole when games could begin after that. But up until then, and even things we've been working on this summer, have been off-season training. And so the idea there is that we create an environment that, again, is safe and responsible and healthy for students to continue to train. And so that involves temperature checks for students and coaches when they come in, incredible social distancing, enhanced cleaning, to make sure that students can still work out, but work out in a safe way. And so the plan is that that would continue until the 17th, when the AIA begins the fall season, and then again, competition beginning Labor Day. Now, that could change, and should it change, we'll certainly pivot with our athletic directors and our headmasters and make sure that you are fully informed. Following that, our Great Hearts Middle School League would begin about a week after our high schools begin. So we're still waiting. We're still, thinking about the guidance that we know will be coming here from the health department. But in the meantime, we have a plan that's in keeping with the plan the state has to keep going with athletics, but in a way that's safe. In terms of how many spectators are there, or what percentage of the building can be filled, so on and so forth, those are things we're continuing to work on, and we'll definitely nail down as competition comes closer. The second area is clubs, and very similar to what was mentioned about the Archway clubs, there won't be clubs for the first quarter of the prep schools. What we want to focus on is the most essential, coming back what the most essential activities are and keeping that safe and right and balanced, and then start to, in the second quarter, get back into clubs. One small exception would be clubs that are preparing for competition. That might be something like a mock trial club that might have a competition in the spring, and setting up some format with their advisor or leader for some online prep or practice. And then the third thing we just wanted to mention is we know how important in-person learning is, right? That you sent your child to a Great Heart School for a whole lot of reasons, and to start, it wasn't for them to learn online. And so we know that you want, especially if your child's going to go back to the in-person learning right away, you want them to have occasion to interact with their peers and to sharpen each other in all good ways. And so while it is certainly true that the number of students and the number of locations in the building that your students are going to interact with on a daily basis will be reduced in order to keep some distancing, there will be opportunities at lunch, for example, where there will be a lot more space afforded to students where they can continue to interact with friends who might not be in their section. Also in the passing periods in the hallways. We don't want it to be a ghost town in there where, two kids are walking silently from class to class at opposite ends of the building, but we do want to reduce the number of students. I'm sure your children can tell you, you sometimes can come out of those classrooms, all, 700 students at once, and you kind of packed in there like sardines trying to make your way to the next class. We don't want that, right? We've never wanted that, but especially now, we're doing all that we can to make sure those numbers are down. So you're still going to see people, have opportunity to interact with them at a distance, but not be so crunched in with them. So I know people are going to have questions about this, and certainly we'll have some Q&A time here at the end. And then if you have particular questions about your child, their locker placement or what section they'll be in, will they stay in the chemistry lab all day, or where will they move? Those kinds of questions, you can certainly take those to your academy as we advance. What we'll do now is turn it over to Eric to mention a little bit more about our mask policy, and then about our further response to any sort of COVID incidents. Eric.
Yeah, thank you, Brandon. Appreciate it. All right, so we've updated the mask policy, as you've probably seen, hopefully. You can find it on the Safe Return webpage that I mentioned earlier. Again, as Leanne mentioned, masks are a part of our layered approach, which includes everything from, she said, temperature checks, better air filtration. We've got better hand sanitation practices, more cleaning, the electrostatic spray cleaning, social distancing, and of course, desk shields in the archways. These layers are meant to create as clean an environment as possible without also creating an incredibly restrictive and impossible to operate learning and social environment. Listen, I don't think there's anyone who looks at the policy and says, yep, that's exactly how I would have written it. I know this is true because I wrote it, and it isn't exactly how I would approach everything. But there's been a lot of shared wisdom in the updates to this policy. Many of you were actually a part of that, and I thank you for it. And I believe that what we've put together is the right approach for now. So one of the layers we have in our approach in the archways is the desk shield. We also will be employing these as needed across our K-12s, especially in special education, and of course for other one-on-one support where it makes sense, and teachers will know how they want to deploy those, again, as needed. I want to show you a picture of the desk shields. So these are meant to really fade into the background. These are, they add an important layer of protection without blocking the view of the teacher or fellow classmates. We've had a few parents say that the existence of these shields will mean that they'll be keeping their kids at home. And I just want to say to everybody, please, I implore you to rethink that decision. These are not going to significantly change the culture of the classroom. What we are doing here is we are seeking to find a balance of safety and learning and a school day that's neither fear-driven nor naive. And it's hard to strike that balance, and we will have our disagreements, I know that, but we have a layered approach that submits to the county ordinances and really allows for reasonable dispensations throughout the day. We'll certainly get to more mask questions. You can always email me. I know a lot of you have. Happy to engage with you about more nuanced questions around masks, face shields, and whether or not your child can wear a face shield. So happy to dive deeper into that. Email me at any time those questions. We may hit some of them in the Q&A. But within all of this is the important work of preparing, as you all know, to respond to a positive case in the community. And the team has been doing just a lot of work on this, working with the health department and others within the community. We've had physicians within the community, parents who have helped us with this, which we're very grateful for. So let me reintroduce Leanne to discuss our COVID response plan with everyone. Leanne? So I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Eric. And I just wanted to say a couple things about the mask. It just brought to my mind and about the desk shields. One of the reasons why we put the desk shields in the K-5 was in order to give the students a break every now and then from their masks. So we would have that extra layer of protection with the desk shields. And then also another thing that was really concerning to me was that having a teacher with a mask on, I didn't want the students to not be able to see their teacher smile or to see the expression on their teachers' faces. So the masks that we've ordered for our teachers do have the clear space around their faces so that they can see their mouths and they'll be able to see the expression on their teacher's face and be able to see the smiles from their teachers. And so now I'd like to just talk to you a little bit about how we're going to respond should there be a case of COVID-19 on campus. As far as that decision-making process goes, that's really going to be a joint decision-making process with the Maricopa County Health Department and the Great Hearts response team. We've got a school campus response team and a Great Hearts response team. So if somebody is identified as having COVID-19 on the campus, then their response team will immediately notify the Great Hearts response team through their executive director, and they will also notify the Maricopa County Health Department. We'll be taking much of our guidance from the professionals at the health department for what our next steps should be and what we should be doing. On our campus response team, we'll have the nurse, the headmaster, the assistant headmaster, the athletic director, our facilities technician. They're all part of that team. Together, we'll all be making decisions regarding contact tracing, isolation, and disinfection. And that will be done really on a case-by-case basis. And then we will be communicating directly with all those who've had close contact with the individually and collectively at a minimum with the section that the student or teacher is in, and possibly with more depending on the guidance that we get from the Maricopa County Health Department. So let's look at a specific case. If we had positive 19, what would we do for isolation, contact tracing, and disinfection? So first of all, the isolation protocols are just what they are for the Maricopa County Health Department. That person will have to isolate for 10 days from the beginning or start of their symptoms, and for at least 24 hours since their fever has gone away. Those 10 days are for if their symptoms are mild or moderate. If their symptoms are more severe, that will have to be 20 days. Or if they're severely immune compromised, that will be 20 days. In addition, they will have to have, their symptoms will have to be starting to improve over time. Now, if they had a positive test and they did not have any symptoms, then we will just ask them to quarantine for 10 days. The next thing we do in our process for a positive case is we look to see who had direct contact with that person. Now, the Maricopa Health Department has determined that direct contact is being within 6 feet of someone without wearing a mask for more than 10 minutes. So in those cases, we will be asking the student, the teacher, who did they sit by during lunch? Who did they play with at recess? We'll be looking at which students sit closest by them in the classroom. Those people we will have contact with, we'll connect with them and ask them to quarantine for 14 days. We'll only be quarantining a whole section or grade level if we're advised to by the Maricopa County Department of Health, and in cases of multiple students in the same section who are testing positive. Students who are quarantined as a result of COVID-19 have the option of joining the distance learning program. We won't be required to stay in it for the entire quarter. If they choose not to join the distance learning program, they may receive homework from school just like they do under normal circumstances when they're ill. As far as disinfecting, we'll fully disinfect the student or teacher's desk and conduct a deep cleaning of the school, which will include disinfecting all areas where the student or faculty member has been with the electrostatic disinfectant sprayer with our hospital grade EPA category 4 cleaning solution, which is 99% effective at killing bacteria and viruses and is the safest solution to use. Whether or not this results in a closure of the school or classroom for a couple of days will depend on guidance from the Maricopa Department of Health. Now, if a student or teacher has been within 6 feet or closer for more than 10 minutes without a mask with someone who has tested positive for COVID-19, they'll be asked to quarantine for the incubation period of 14 days since their last day of exposure. If they begin to show symptoms, then their quarantine period of 10 days will start from the time they started showing symptoms. We don't ask people who have been in close contact to get tested because the virus is still incubating in their system. They could get tested at the beginning of that time period and the virus could still be in the system. And they could test negative, and if they came back to school, they might still have the virus in them. And so we ask them to stay quarantined for 14 days, or if they start developing symptoms, then we know that they may have the virus. And at that point, then we start the clock for a 10-day of symptoms. If a student or teacher is exhibiting symptoms, then the guidelines for the COVID-19 positive isolation guidelines will start. The student will be able to return earlier if they have a doctor's note. So if your symptoms are just that you have a runny nose or you have allergies, if you have a doctor's note that says that that's what your symptoms are, then you can, of course, return back to the classroom. Or if the student then, after the 14 days, has 2 negative tests that are both negative within 24 hours, then they can also return to class. The COVID mitigation plan will be up on our websites by August the 6th. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Eric for our question and answer time.
Awesome. Thank you, Leanne. Appreciate it. Leanne, I want to stick with you for this first one. You addressed it earlier, but I think it's probably good to come back to it. So I'm just thinking about working families and just this question of, and I think you're still muted, Leanne, but this question of, hey, we've got 1, 2, 3 kids at home. It's Great Hearts, so we've got 15 kids at home, and we can't have them all online and manage a bunch of live sessions at once. So can you first talk about just again what we're doing to try to give a little support to those families, and then maybe also just on the heels of that, after the 17th, can you talk a little bit about what we're starting to put together to support families who maybe are really having issues with childcare and can't, for whatever reasons, for hardship reasons or otherwise, have their kids at home. So I know those are 2 kind of big questions, but why don't we start there, because I think it's probably on the hearts and minds of a lot of our parents.
Of course, we know that it's really complicated trying to get your students online at certain times of the day, attendance being required, and the student going off to daycare. Oftentimes, some daycare programs will work with you, the boys club and the girls club. I know are programs that are willing to work with you. Some are not. And we know this is going to create a hardship for some families. In the weeks between now or August 6th or 10th, when your school is starting, and August 17th, before we are even allowed to have students in the classroom, our headmasters and teachers are willing to work with you. We ask that you just reach out to them and let them know of your situation. They will be taping and recording the Zoom sessions so that your students can watch them later at another time, relaxing a little bit some of the attendance guidelines and regulations, allowing some things to be turned in a little bit later than usual. So I just really want to encourage you to reach out to your headmaster and let them know. And then as far as once August 17th is here, we are developing plans now to create some places, possibly regional places where we can bring some students in to do some distance learning. That we're going to start. Our priority will be for our most vulnerable students. Those will be our students who are our ESS students, our ELL students, our free and reduced lunch students. But given that if we have enough space, we have enough people that are willing to work those places, we'll definitely open it up to people that just, they need it for childcare reasons because they don't have anybody to stay at home with their kids. That possibly will have to be by lottery. So we're asking you right now to reach out to your headmasters if you think that might be you, if that's going to be a problem for you. And we can't promise that we'll have the space available, but we'll do the best that we can to see what we can do from that time period until we have our buildings open.
We had another question, and Leanne, you could take this too. Jay could take it. Brandon could speak to it from an upper school perspective. But what do you expect? What do y'all expect the impact on class sizes to be, given we've got about 40% of the community that looks like even once we reopen campuses. I know this might look different at different campuses, but can you give a little sense or at least direction to families to get a better sense of what their academy might look like when it comes to class size? And then another question, Leanne, will assistance, this would be for you in the Archway, will assistance be available? What will that look like? But let's start with just the overall class size.
Great. So for the Archway, it's really going to vary. One thing we're not doing is we're not over enrolling our classes to make up for the fact that some of the students won't be there. So we're not going to take our distance learners out and say, hey, now we've got lots of room, let's bring in lots more kids. We're not doing that. So we will keep our class sizes at 30 where they are. In some cases, we will have one whole section be remote learners, and those will have their own teacher. And then there might be two other sections that will both have classes of 30 students that are in the building. In other cases, the teachers will each have some of their students will be distance learners in their classroom, and some of their students will be classroom learners. And in those classrooms, there might be 15 to 20 students in each classroom, and then the rest of the students are learning from a distance. So it's just really going to depend on the grade level. It's going to depend on the school and the way that they have that set up. We really wanted to give our teachers some option and some choice in how they wanted to do that, because we really wanted we wanted teachers buy-in so that we could have the best teachers teaching, and the teachers who really wanted to teach in those hybrid classes and in those remote sections. So it will just.
Brandon, do you want to add anything to that, Brandon, on the prep side?
No, just to say it'll be really similar. It'll depend on the school and the particular circumstance. Certainly, you won't have any more children than would be typical in a classroom, but the numbers could be a lot lower, just depending on the time of year, the circumstance, and how many students are in there. One thing to certainly be prepared for is that as the numbers change, right, at each quarter, as more students start to come back to the school in person from online learning, the size of those sections and where students are sectioned will change, but certainly it'll never be higher than our typical numbers in a prep classroom. It's just hard to say across the valley where each one will be in terms of class size.
So I know we'll return to this. I want to pivot really quickly though and ask Ava to come on. Ava, there's a good question here about the electrostatic sprayer. I don't know how much more details you can give about it. Parents may be thinking that it's some sort of crazy venom that's being sprayed into everybody's eyes and dangerous. Can you talk a little bit about what's being sprayed and when it's being sprayed? And if we don't have all those specific details, how can we get those out? How can we get those out to families? Because we definitely need to do that.
Right. I think that we would have to get that out to the families so that I could be specific and not trying to say what I think it is. I've heard Ken Tyrell describe it as a fogger. And I'm not certain, I'm not certain. So I would love to be able to give that out to all the families, and that will be on my to-do list.
Okay, and I know we've got Marilyn Papke, who heads up operations. So Marilyn, if you've got, you don't have to do it now, but maybe later in the Q&A you could jump on and give us more information on that. But I imagine that if it, that fogger is not happening while the students are in the classroom, in the middle of a lesson.
No, not at all, not at all. But it is being taken care of.
Yeah, Marilyn, we'll get more information. It's a good question. I'm sorry that we don't have more detailed information for you all right now. Okay, well, let's go back to remote learning. Leanne, I hate to throw it back into your court again, but I think it's a good one for a lot of our families. Can you speak a little bit about remote learning for kindergartners? I'm asking this. It's not my question. We did get it from a parent, but full disclosure, I am the parent of an incoming kindergartner, and have mourned that a little bit, that our little Henry's first experience of kindergarten is going to be online, and it's rough, right? That's really rough. So talk a little bit about what our wonderful kindergarten teachers are doing to ease them into that experience and to make it, to make it as human as possible.
I know. Thank goodness that they're kindergarten teachers, and that is their love, and that is their vocation in life and what they long to do, because they know how to make it exciting, and they'll be doing that, and they'll make it very good. Our kindergartners will be watching their teacher, and they'll be interacting with their teacher. So their teacher will get up and be teaching them Spalding, and they'll be in a little Zoom session, and they'll be also echoing back the Spalding along with the teacher. And the teacher will be doing some math lessons and asking the kids to do those along with them. And probably the teacher will ask them to grab, some things around the house to help them along with their math lessons, some beans or something like that, so that they can do some counting or whatever's around, or provide some counting materials for them at school that they can take home with them. So there'll be things like that they're doing. They'll be reading books. There'll be lots of stories, lots of story time, lots of fables and fairy tales. Kids learn a lot of reading actually through listening to others read. They learn they get a lot of language development by hearing other people's read to them. So they will be listening to the teacher read a lot to them, as well as the teacher listening to them read. So they will be actually put into leveled readers. They'll be reading books after they've learned their phonograms, and somebody will be reading with them either on the phone or through a one-on-one Zoom session. And they'll be advancing through their little leveled readers throughout their time in distance learning, and getting the excitement of learning how to read, just like they would if they were in the classroom. They'll get to watch little video lessons from the art teacher and participate along with the art class in drawing or doing the different things, coloring what the art teacher is doing. They'll get to watch the PE teacher do a little lesson in PE and participate along with that. So there'll be lots of interactive kinds of activities for them. It won't be too long. The kindergarten is going to be about 2.5 hours. So mostly morning time. We know that those kids peter out by around lunchtime. So that's what it's going to look like for our kindergartners.
Absolutely. Thank you, Leanne. There was another question just about how full day kinder pay works during this time of distance learning, and safe to say that no, like we did in Q4, those payments won't go through until we get back to full day on campus support for those that are enrolled in that. Jake, I think it makes sense to throw this to you. There's a question. I think we had it at the last town hall as well, but I think it'd be good to return to it. Just, there's some questions about why do you have to commit to a full quarter online? Why can't a parent tell us now that they want to do distance learning and then get a week into it and decide, hey, I'm better now, I'm good, I'm ready to get back on campus and into the classroom. I don't want to do this all the way through the first quarter. Why haven't we offered that option? I think it's a fair question.
Yeah, it's a totally fair question, and I'm glad to field that. So remember, when we're designing the distance learning program, and when we're thinking hard about the thing that we've been doing for decades, which is the in-person learning, we're trying to make really good decisions about how we run that in a way that is most effective given those mediums, right? So for example, there was a related question about why not just spread all the students out and get class sizes down? And in some cases that may work. In other cases, like humane letters, where it's discussion based, we really want to guard against distance learning students becoming almost sort of second class citizens. And what we found is that if in something like humane letters, if somebody's trying to zoom into that conversation, it doesn't really work. It works much better to have, in that case, sort of a whole distance learning section that's doing a Zoom seminar. Because of that, Eric, that's where this is related to your question. Because of trying to make some good decisions about how to utilize technology in the best way, there are cases where we need to group distance learning students together. And that becomes a really hard thing for the distance learning students and for the in-building students if there's a constant flow in and out throughout the quarter. We can organize those sections better and have those natural transition points at the ends of the quarter, so that works a little bit cleaner, works a little bit more smoothly. So it has everything to do with trying to make really good decisions around how we do distance learning versus how we do in-person learning. And again, there are some cases where it's much better to have full sections of distance learning students, like seminars. And in those cases, it becomes really hard to have kids coming in and out throughout the quarter. And that's why we're asking just for a one quarter commitment.
Yeah. Well, like a lot of 2020, it seems to present no perfect solution. So thank you for that. Brandon, Leanne, let's turn it over to our kids with special needs. There's obviously, and I'm asking this selfishly too. I think we've got one of those little kiddos, and so will you talk a little bit about how students with special needs, how they'll be accommodated through the distance learning program? How are we managing all that?
Yeah, maybe Leanne, I'll take a crack at it first and then definitely follow up. This is something we've been discussing a lot with our Director of Special Student Services, Tom Dobler, throughout the state of Arizona for Great Hearts. Even talking about, is there an opportunity to set up one of these specifically for ESS students, a town hall for their families. But certainly what would happen is that IEP meetings will still occur. There would still be teams coming together. Of course, they'd likely happen online via Zoom, or once we come back into buildings, it could be, some in person, some on Zoom. So we want to get everything right. And then we want to go to how do we provide those services? And if any of you have students with special needs, the range of services could be a lot different. So we want to take each case particularly. In some cases, that can occur via Zoom, right? That student's one-on-one aid can work with them via Zoom in a way that works well. In other cases, they're going to need services from providers that'll be a little more complicated. And so what we want to do is work specifically with the ESS coordinator at the school and the family and the student to make sure we're meeting the needs of the student in whatever circumstance it may present itself. So taking into account special schedules and so on and so forth. But the caseload, so to speak, of the school, of the students with special needs will still be managed at the school level, where the teachers and the ESS coordinators will work together with families to deliver what the student needs. Leanne, is there anything more you'd add to that on the Archway end?
I don't think so, Brandon. I think if you think the student needs additional accommodations to access the technology, then that's something you want to discuss with your caseworker, and they can pull the team together, and they can talk about some additional accommodations that might be necessary to add to their IP.
Good. I mean, it bears repeating. It's always true that we're here to serve, and so just really transparent, open communication between families and schools about their needs. That's always the best place to start, and we know that our colleagues at the academies are ready to serve you all. There's a question again. I feel like all of these are selfish because as a parent, we experienced Alice and I experienced all of this stuff really. Will parents have to download and print anything? Will they have to take pictures and upload things to Google Classroom? Sort of, can you guys talk a little bit? Jake, I don't know if you want to start, but can you all talk a little bit just about a little more about the sort of difference between the Q4 experience of remote learning and sort of what will be expected in the way in which students and parents are interacting with content, especially the content that they complete, and then make sure that they've shared that with their teachers. Is that going to look much different, Jake? Just if you could dive into that a little bit, it'd be helpful.
Yeah, let me tackle some general principles, and I'm happy to let my colleagues Brandon and Leanne talk about it specifically from the prep school and Archway school, Archway level. Yeah, look, we learned a lot through our Herculean efforts in the spring about what Google Classroom does well and what it doesn't do well, and we know that there's some heartburn with parents who needed to print a lot and write things down and then take pictures and scan and all of that. And so we're taking steps to make sure that is minimized as much as we can, and to really leverage some of the other tools that we can plug into Google Classroom for things like assessments. Eric, you asked one of the, what would be different versus the spring. I think we've talked a good bit about how, that distance learning will have more robust video support, more live video touch points. But one thing that I don't think we've mentioned yet is that there will be more frequent assessments. The best practices in online education suggest that students benefit more from shorter but more frequent assessments. And so we're trying to work with our headmasters, who can then work with their teachers to design some of these assessments that seem to work really well in an online environment, to make sure that kids really are keeping up with the learning. Because they're shorter, because they're more frequent, there are also going to be then some opportunities for us to leverage some technology that makes it much easier for students and families to submit their work, but also then easier for the teachers to be able to provide feedback and get that feedback back to students. So we're working to minimize that because we know that was tough. To be fair, there are going to be some situations, and I think here of kind of the lower school in particular, so maybe I'll turn it over to Leanne for some thoughts on this, where handwriting itself is really important, and that's very difficult to do digitally. And so there are going to probably be some cases where we still need to have some work that's done on paper and then scanned and uploaded to Google, but we're working to try to minimize that. Brandon, Leanne, do you want to weigh in just specifically from Archway and prep on that concept?
I think you answered that really well, Jake. I think that's exactly what we're trying to do, trying to minimize the amount of printing and uploading that you'll have to do. We'll be able to use their workbooks a lot more, but then again, there will be some scanning of those workbooks and uploading onto Google Classroom. We're also trying to train our teachers in more of the tools of Google Classroom so that they can use more of those tools and more of those assessment tools, so that there can be less of that downloading of materials. But we can't promise that it will be completely gone. And so we'll ask you to be patient and to also to talk to your schools. There will be some, probably more so in the lower grades, a little bit more of that than there will be in the upper grades.
Perfect.
Yeah, I don't really
Thank you. Go ahead, Brandon.
I don't have much to add except one thing that will be different is you won't have to pick up your massive packet at the beginning of the week and then figure out how am I supposed to submit that. So we're definitely away from that, but everything my colleagues Leanne and Jake said is spot on.
And just to tie a bow on it, Eric, with regards to that question about how things will be different from the spring, I think Brandon and Leanne did a nice job of this earlier, but we should really kind of re-emphasize it. The thing that's the most different is that there will be an instructional schedule because of the higher number of synchronous touch points of live video instruction. It won't exactly model a school day where you have period 1, period 2, because that's simply not best practice in online education. But it will have some of that feel, and you might have an experience at your building where you have a block schedule where certain subjects are meeting only certain days, but maybe for a longer period of time, and that may vary depending on the subject and the school. But there will be much more of a feel of an instructional schedule that students will have to get used to. And that, of course, goes for everybody for the period of time that we're all home. But then also as we open our buildings and some students choose to stay in the distance learning program, all of these changes will be true in both scenarios.
Okay, perfect. I want to turn to 2 prep questions. The first one, I'll try my hand at. There's this question, because we're not going to have the shields, the desk shields in the prep school. What does a middle or high school classroom look like because of the absence of the shields? And really the answer is this is why the mask policy is more restrictive as the kids get older. One reason is obviously to deal with the maturation of the child and what we think is reasonable in terms of the amount of time that they can be expected to be masked. But this is why when it comes to these classrooms that we have in the upper school, many of which are actually smaller than our elementary classrooms. This is why we have a more restrictive mask policy. Now, I know that a lot of schools are looking at buying extra desks and finding creative ways to keep people, in a sense, socially distanced as much as possible within the classroom. But this is also why everyone, we've said from the beginning that we can't treat the mask as a panacea. We can't create a no-risk environment. We're doing what we can with these layered approach to health and safety to make sure that we're doing things that are reasonable and feel that we can open up the schools in a way that protects everyone in the classroom. But again, this is why when you look at that policy, our sixth grade and up are going to be masked more often than our lower school kids throughout the day. On the other prep question, Brandon and Jake, you could jump in here too if you want to add something. But there's a question about how prep students are going to be held to the same standard online as in person when online has less time, and it looks to this parent as though there's less time and less work. Can you talk about how we're meeting that high standard and why in an at-home environment, maybe in a sense the time is a little more efficient in terms of some of the things that do take place during the school day that eat up time, and why they actually will be engaged in their classes and in their content in a deep way and be protected from falling behind. So Brandon, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. One, you've already mentioned, Eric, which is just the efficiencies that are created when a student is there working alone without, going through, taking attendance, right, or everyone getting settled, those sorts of things, is a lot more, far more efficient, like you said. The second piece really is that everything will still be covered. The question is always just there about the amount of time, the essence of the depth. So, 30 hours discussing Homer and 25 hours discussing Homer. 30 hours is certainly more, but what we want to focus on is that students are still getting the essence and that they're still able to progress through the curriculum and not fall behind. And so is it the case that there will be more hours spent every day with a student in front of a teacher in person than it would online? That's certainly true. What our teachers are tasked with, and it's certainly a monumental lift, is how do we make sure that students are still getting the highest quality of what we do in the online format, even if it is fewer hours. We think we can do it. We think it'll be good, but this isn't the long-term plan, right? It's a plan for the short foreseeable future, not that we're saying, hey, 6 years of a Great Hearts education online is going to be the same as a Great Hearts education in person.
Yeah, Brandon, another thing that kind of comes to mind is this question just about support for a kid who's in the distance learning program, who's got questions. how does getting the answers to those questions, getting feedback from the teacher, having that little side discussion about, hey, did you mean this? I wasn't clear on that. How does that line up, that type of support that the student's going to need? How does that line up to the expectation to be in class every day, learning new things and submitting work ostensibly every day? Is the student going to be able to reach out to their teacher and get some of that, maybe we wouldn't call it immediate feedback, but feedback that's timely enough that they can stay at pace with the expected work that they have to do? Can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, certainly. So the first thing is, just like in person, students or families can reach out to teachers whenever, right? They can, our preferred way of contact is through email. So if there's a question or something like that, they can certainly do that. The other thing is they're going to have, on a regular basis, live instructional time with that teacher. So that's not just me as the teacher standing and delivering to you on a screen for 55 minutes. There's a lesson there, but then there's also guided practice where I can say, all right, Eric, spend time working on this math problem. All right, how's everyone doing? So the teacher is able to gauge in that live video session how students are doing. In addition to that, there's also going to be opportunity for every teacher to have weekly tutoring opportunities with students, live tutoring opportunities every week as well, right? So that for example, Thursdays at 3 p.m., I can go to either Latin tutoring or history tutoring, or both, right? And the teacher will be there to answer any questions you have. So there's a multitude of ways that a student could get direct feedback from a live human being during the school week.
Perfect. I want to shift to attendance real fast. Before we do that, we had a good question about can kinder parents walk their kids to class on the first day. The answer is yes, you can. Parents will be allowed to walk their kids to class on the first day. You'll have to be masked, of course, and have a temperature check and all that stuff. But there will be an allowance for those kinder kids to not just be kicked out of the car, and you'll certainly be able to take them there to their classroom and take photos and do all of that. So work with your headmaster on how that will look in particular. But yes, they'll be able to do that. There's some good questions that came through when we opened up a week ago. The question portal have some that have come through today in the chat room. This about how students will be counted as absent for not attending a live session. I don't know which one of you wants to grab this. Leanne, you can certainly take it, or Jake, you can take it. But can you talk a little bit just about that, and then if a kid needs to be out, and Leanne, I think you addressed this a little bit earlier, but so yeah, what happens if they just miss a day? Like how does that work? But also, and that could be for things totally unrelated to health, right? It's just a normal thing going on that they have going on. How does the parent interact with the school in that, and then how does that affect them? But I think there's also a really good question just about, well, what if a kid is out for 20 days because they're sick? Is there leeway here? Is there a dispensation, or is that kid kicked out of the school and has no option left to them? So Leanne, can you address those two things?
So that is complicated, of course. So as far as one of your questions was, if the student was out for 20 days, what would happen then? Well, our same attendance rules apply for our distance learners as they apply for our in-school learners. So if the student's out for 20 days, it's going to depend on if those absences are excused or unexcused. So we would ask the parent to call the school and let us know why the student is out for that day. And then, if it's an excused absence, then we would excuse it. If it's an unexcused absence, it would be unexcused. If 10 unexcused absences means that we have to withdraw the student from the school. That's been the policy, and that actually is the law of the state of Arizona. However, if a student has COVID-19, for example, that's going to be an excused absence. And we're going to allow the student to make up work if they're sick. That's always been the case at Great Hearts. If a student is sick, we allow them to make up work. So we just want the parent to communicate with the teacher, with the school, what's going on, why is the student missing missing the day or missing the work. As far as missing a Zoom session or something like that, the Zoom, the recorded sessions will have something within them, like maybe a question or two that the student can answer when they watch it later on, that will show that they attended that recorded Zoom session, and that will show their attendance in that recorded session. So there will be a way to mark that they actually saw that video and they attended it, so that the teacher knows that they were present.
Thank you, Leanne. That's good to know. And if you've got follow-up questions on any of these, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can email me directly at etwist@greatheartsarizona.org. You can always go, it's easy also to just go questions. I think it's questions@greatheartsamerica.org. And so you can go there, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. We have a little bit of time left. I want to go back to IEP and special ed questions. So will those IEP services start during distance learning? I think this was addressed really quickly a little bit ago, but maybe you could address it again really quickly here, Brandon. Will they start at the beginning of distance learning or not until the campus opens? So if you could just take maybe 15 seconds to grab that question really quick.
Yeah, the plan would be for them to start whenever service is needed. So students learning at the beginning of week 1 should start to have that. At the same time, if there's some kind of testing or assessing that needs to be done, that might take a reasonable amount of time. But yeah, when learning begins, students can expect their services to begin as well, even if it is in an online format or adjusted.
Great. Let's go back, Leanne. I want to bring you back on again. Let's just dive deeper again into a scenario. I want to dive into whether if a teacher contracts COVID, what are the dominoes that fall there? And let's talk, if we can, a little bit about what we're doing on campus to try to mitigate adult to adult contraction. I know that's something that we've been really focused on, and actually something that's more of a concern than, say, student to student or student to adult. There's a lot of good data coming in now that is very positive data that gives us some hope and some confidence around the limited viral loads in students, and that students aren't always the issue when it comes to reopening schools, but adult to adult contact. So if we could talk a little bit about, again, what we're doing there, even if we're reiterating some of the things we've already said, that's fine. But could you talk about the incident response for teachers?
Right. We've actually already started our incident response for teachers, because teachers are already having meetings, and some of them have been meeting on campus. And so when we have those meetings on campus, we are following all of the protocols. So they already are getting their temperatures taken as they come on campus. So that's the first thing that's happening. If they have any symptoms, they're not attending. They're attending by Zoom. When they attend any meetings, they are sitting 6 feet apart, and they all have to wear masks when they're on campus, the entire time that they're on campus. So we're trying to keep them as healthy as we possibly can, because we really need our teachers, and we want to protect them. I mean, we love them, and we want to do our best by them. So we really want to protect our teachers. So we do all of those things while they're on campus, with the cleaning and the HEPA filters and just the requirements that we have for them as well to keep them safe. And then also the quarantine. And unfortunately, that requires sometimes that a teacher has to be out and quarantine for a couple of weeks. And when that happens, if it happens during the school year, then we're going to have to get a substitute to come in. And the Archway level, that sometimes that can be our TAs can step in for the teacher, and sometimes that's going to have to be somebody else, another substitute. Sometimes even when the substitute's there, the teacher might be able to Zoom herself in or himself in to the classroom from home, and it'll be reversed, and the teacher will be teaching the classroom from home and the kids will be in the class. But we can work things out so that it works out and they can still have that connection sometimes. But if the teacher is sick, certainly we wouldn't want to impose that upon them. So we have hired some extra substitutes at each building to accommodate for that, and we're ready for that to happen. Hopefully it won't, but we're not naive. That definitely could happen, and hopefully what we really plan on doing is not coming back to school until this thing kind of dies down a little bit and the metrics get a little bit safer for us to return to school.
Thank you, Leanne. You know, it's worth saying again. You know, our teachers are, we know, excited to start serving their students again. Most are ready to come back to the campus, but we have some that are worried, and so you know, always ask parents to be very sensitive to the position that the teachers are in all of this. You know, they are essential workers. That's been made clear by a number of people, and I know that the work that they do is absolutely important to obviously not just the economy, but more importantly to the social, emotional development, intellectual development of our youngest. And so they have a high calling, and in this time, a very sacrificial calling in many ways. So we need to continue to work together to do everything that we can to make sure that we're opening up prudently and that we've got things in place that protect everybody, certainly protect the kids, but we're thinking every day, and I know our headmasters are, about our colleagues. So there's always more coming out, more information coming out, and so if you've got more that you'd like to learn about what we're doing on campus with all of these safety protocols, please don't hesitate to email and to reach out to us. You know, we're getting near the end here. Questions about how specials will be handled with distance learning. Are they going to be pass-fail? What does grading look like for the students that are in those classes? And I know that there were some concerns in quarter four just about the depth of support and well, depth of inquiry really that was allowed, that was afforded to kids during quarter four. Sometimes it could feel more like busy work. Could you all talk a little bit about what we're doing to make sure that specials are richer than they were in quarter four, and then exactly how it looks from the overall academic program and assessments?
Sure. So specials have always been, or at least for the last few years, have been a pass-fail for our students. So they'll continue to be for that, but they'll also have the checklist. So what we're doing is we will have specials will be required for our students. They'll still be required, but they won't be required to attend all of the sessions. So headmasters will set a certain number of sessions for each special at each grade level that are required in order for the student to have a pass for that quarter. So maybe 10 music lessons will be supplied, and the student at kindergartner will have to attend 3 of them. Maybe a 5th grader will have to attend 6 of them in order to get a pass. But those sessions will be a little bit, we hope, a little bit more engaging and activate a little bit more the sense of wonder in our kids. So in as many cases as possible, we hope they'll be live streamed from the school, so that students can actually just sit in on the art class that's actually happening in 2nd grade at their school and do what the kids at school are doing in art, or that's recorded and they get to attend that later on in the day. So, or the teacher might do a mini lesson, a 10-minute lesson on how do you do stippling, and they could watch that and they could do a little lesson on stippling and actually learn something about art. We really don't want to do these lengthy research projects on somebody, on an artist or on a composer, when you can actually be listening to beautiful music, or you could be participating in drawing something beautiful along with the rest of the class. So it should simulate the experience that kids are having in the classroom as much as possible, is what we're asking our specials teachers to do.
Brandon, anything to add there?
No, and I'll speak for all of our fine arts teachers in the network. The class time that they have each day at the prep school is no less than calculus or Spanish or any other subject. So when we return to in-building, what we'll have to do for music and what we'll have to do for things like drama will have to be adjusted a little bit, because you can't have students standing closely to each other in a Hamlet sword fight. So we'll have to adjust that, but they'll still be doing remote activities in classes when we're online 100%, that teachers are doing a lot of work on to say, how can we make it as meaningful as possible, given that, it's kind of hard to perform theater when you're each at your own desk. So there's work there, but not any kind of diminishing of the richness that we want to have in an arts class.
And one more thing, Eric.
Perfect. Yeah.
People are concerned about singing as well, and what might happen if. So the music class will look a little bit different. If the students are doing any kind of singing, that will probably be done outside in an outdoor classroom, sufficiently spaced apart. Otherwise, in the classroom, it will be more of a instrumental with the different rhythm instruments that we have in our classrooms, and a little bit of theory, but the singing portion of it will probably be done outside and more spatially distant.
Perfect. Well, we're coming to the end of our time here, and I know we didn't get to all the questions. We'll continue to answer questions as we head into the days and weeks before us. We are here to serve you. We're here to make sure that we get your questions answered, and certainly, like Jake said early on in the town hall, to learn from you and to grow in terms of how we're going to approach this unprecedented situation and make sure we're making good decisions. I just want to remind everybody about some things. So the family return to learning forms have been sent out. They have to be completed by this Wednesday, so the 29th, so by this Wednesday. If you haven't received the form, you can log into the parent portal to complete that. If that doesn't work, just email me, email questions at greatartsamerica.org, and we'll get it to you. It doesn't take too long to complete it. Allison did it for our family, I think, yesterday. So if you need it, just reach out. If schools have not already held one, I think most of them have. Parents, you'll be hearing from your campus over the next week or so for a school-specific event where you can find out more about all of the return to learning, both in the distance learning side and of course on the return to campus. The recording of this town hall will be posted to the Safe Return website. So if you have friends that didn't get to watch it, just let them know. They can go there and watch that. Again, the Safe Return website is just greatheartsamerica.org /safereturn/AZ, greatheartsamerica.org/safereturn/AZ. Thank you to all my colleagues for all of their work, ongoing work. It's been an interesting time. Thank you to you parents for being so patient with us and for the kind emails and for the professional way in which you've engaged us. We really appreciate it. We have a wonderful community, the best public education community in the country. And so thank you for this. Thank you for taking time out of your day to engage with us. So we'll keep close to you all in the weeks ahead, but stay safe, and we'll see you soon. So thank you again. Bye.